Her story began not with a bang, but with a slap. Alara Hayes lay sprawled on the cement floor of a Shadow Creek police cell, wrist clamped by steel cuffs, cheek burning where Sergeant Marcus Kane's hand had struck. The fluorescent light above flickered, throwing shadows across his hulking figure. His breath reeked of stale coffee, his eyes of contempt. "I told you shut your mouth," he growled. In the doorway, Rookie Officer Finn stood frozen, horror etched across his young face. He had signed up to protect and serve, not to watch a defenseless woman brutalized. Yet here, he was witnessing the unraveling of justice. But this story did not begin in the cell. 2 hours away in the sprawling city of Viridian, Hayes, 48, was one of the most respected forensic audio analysts in the world. Her high-tech office brimmed with equipment most people couldn't even name. She could isolate a whisper beneath the roar of engines, unmask a spliced recording, or tell the difference between two nearly identical gunshots. Her ears were her weapon, her gift, her livelihood. In her career, she had unveiled truths criminals prayed would stay hidden. Yet in her personal life, truth had only brought pain. After 20 years, her marriage had collapsed, not with fiery betrayal, but with a slow erosion, silence hardening into distance. Now her apartment felt like a museum of endings, her ex-husband's boxes still stacked in the corner like tombstones of love. One restless Friday afternoon, after wrapping a case, she felt the overwhelming urge to flee. Shadow Creek, her childhood town, whispered in her memory. 10 years had passed since her last visit. Maybe, she thought, she could reconnect with the simpler self she once was. She packed a small bag, slid behind the wheel of her sedan, and drove into the fading daylight. Meanwhile, in Shadow Creek, Marcus Kane's day was unraveling. A bitter fight with his wife over their spiraling debt had left him raw. At the station, Sheriff Hale had chewed him out for sloppy paperwork, questioning his competence. 15 years on the force, and still treated like a rookie. Resentment festered inside him, boiling into rage. By the time he and Finn climbed in the patrol car, he was desperate for something, anything, to reassert control. Alara reached Shadow Creek at dusk. The town looked frozen in time. Weathered houses, the old war monument, manicured lawns. She drove past her childhood home, nostalgia tugging at her heart, before pulling into the Rusty Anchor, a bar where she'd once laughed with friends. Inside, the air smelled of beer and fried food. Alara ordered a glass of Chardonnay, then another and another. Memories mixed with loneliness, and the alcohol made her laughter too loud, her words too sharp. When the bartender handed her the bill, she noticed an extra charge. "I only had 3 glasses," she said. "You had 4, he snapped, dismissive. It was a small dispute, only a few dollars, but to Alara it felt heavy. Her pride flared. Her insistence drew glances. One irritated patron, eager to be rid of the scene, dialed the police. Drunk woman causing trouble. The radio call lit up in Kane's car. Disturbance at the Rusty Anchor. His lips curled into a cruel smile. A perfect chance. When he strode into the bar with Finn trailing, the crowd fell silent. Kane's gaze found her instantly. A woman dressed too well for this place. Face flushed, eyes shining with defiance. He didn't see Alara Hayes, expert analyst, accomplished professional. He saw what his prejudice told him to see. An outsider, a nuisance, an easy target. "All right, ma'am," he said, voice dripping mockery. "The party's over. Time to go." The way he spat the word "ma'am" made her blood boil. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. You can't speak to me like that." Her words weren't wrong, but they were fatal. Kane's fragile authority couldn't stand challenge. "Oh, I don't have any rights," he sneered. "Let me show you mine. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and public intoxication." Finn's eyes darted nervously, but he said nothing. Kane grabbed her arm. Reflexively, Alara pulled back. "Don't touch me." Resisting an officer, Kane roared, his fury unleashed. He twisted her arm, slamming cold cuffs around her wrists. Her cry echoed through the bar as curious eyes watched, some with pity, others with judgment. Shoved into the patrol car, Alara fought to hold back tears. "You can't do this. I know my rights. I want your badge number." Kane caught her gaze in the rearview mirror, smirking. "The only right you have now is the right to remain silent." The sirens wailed. The town lights blurred past. And deep inside, Alara knew this was no ordinary arrest. It was the beginning of something darker, something that would test the very limits of justice in Shadow Creek. Alara Hayes drove back to Viridian with rage boiling inside her. The slap, The humiliation, the cover-up, all of it burned deeper than a bruise on her cheek. She knew she couldn't rely on the system. It was designed to protect itself. But she wasn't bound by their rules. She had her own. After weeks of delays, the Shadow Creek Police Department finally sent her a USB drive with Sergeant Kane's bodycam file. The video was a blur of colors. The audio, an incomprehensible storm of static. Anyone else would have given up, but Alara was an audio analyst. Sound was her weapon. In her soundproofed office, she loaded the file into her analysis software. The spectrum appeared before her, not as noise, but as patterns. Slowly, she stripped away layers of interference. The radio hum, the microphone hiss, the artificial distortions. 3 voices emerged. Kane's deep growl, Officer Finn's nervous tone, and her own. Then she saw it. The distortion wasn't random. It was a crude algorithm Kane had used to scramble the audio. With a few lines of code, Alara reversed it. When she pressed play, the truth poured out. She heard Kane sneer at her in the patrol car, mocking her profession. She heard her own voice at the station, calm but insistent. "I'm not going anywhere until I get my lawyer." She heard the metallic clang of her cuffs striking the wall as Kane shoved her, proving she was restrained. Then came Finn's sharp intake of breath, followed by the slap. And finally, the whisper, Kane's voice, cold and damning, who didn't see anything. She fell on her own. Alara tore off her headphones, pulse racing. This was no longer just an assault. It was proof of conspiracy. District Attorney Miller, Sheriff Hale, and Kane had tried to bury her, but she had unearthed their crime. She knew better than to file a civil suit in Shadow Creek, where the deck was stacked against her. Instead, she went to Arthur Reed, a veteran civil rights attorney in Viridian. He had heard countless stories of abuse, most of them impossible to prove. Alara didn't come with tears. She came with evidence. She placed her laptop before him. "Mr. Reed, I believe I have a case." Skeptical, he told her it was her word against 2 officers. Alara only smiled and played the restored file. The room filled with Kane's insults, Finn's gasps, and finally the chilling whisper. Reed leaned back, stunned. "Good God," he muttered. "You don't just have a case, you have a bomb." He didn't waste time with small town courts. He compiled a package. Her report, the original and restored files, and a damning legal brief. Copies went to the state attorney general, the FBI, and the state's largest newspaper. The charges weren't limited to assault. They included conspiracy, perjury, and obstruction of justice. The fallout was immediate. Federal agents descended on the Shadow Creek station. Officers panicked. Young Finn, terrified of prison, cracked first. In exchange for leniency, he confessed everything, confirming Alara's analysis point by point. Kane's trial became a spectacle. Reporters filled the courtroom. Locals who once hailed him as a hero now came to watch his downfall. The prosecution's centerpiece was the audio restoration. When the jury heard it, the silence was suffocating. Every word was clear. The mockery, the gasp, the slap, the whisper. The lie that she had fallen was shattered. On the stand, Alara testified with precision, explaining the science behind her work. She wasn't just a victim. She was an expert dismantling the defense in real time. The jury saw her not as fragile, but formidable. By the trial's end, Kane's arrogance had crumbled. Sheriff Hale resigned under investigation, and District Attorney Miller faced scrutiny for the department's corruption. The once untouchable circle of power in Shadow Creek collapsed like a rotten structure finally exposed to daylight. For Alara, it wasn't victory she savored most, but vindication. She had turned their own weapon against them. They thought a blurred video and scrambled audio would bury her. They thought intimidation would silence her. But Alara Hayes could hear whispers in the storm, and she made sure the world heard them.